It's a complicated situation that very few companies were in, right? Complicated in both positive and negative sense. Docker has a name and Docker has presence. It doesn't have business yet.
This is DevOps Paradox, episode number 168. Should you use Docker Desktop in 2022? Welcome to DevOps Paradox. This is a podcast about random stuff in which we, Darren and Viktor, pretend we know what we're talking about. Most of the time, we mask our ignorance by putting the word DevOps everywhere we can and mix it with random buzzwords like Kubernetes, serverless, CI/CD, team productivity, islands of happiness, and other fancy expressions that make us sound like we know what we're doing. Occasionally, we invite guests who do know something, but we do not do that often since they might make us look incompetent. The truth is out there, and there is no way we are going to find it. P.S. It's Darren reading this text and feeling embarrassed that Viktor made me do it. Here are your hosts, Darren Pope and Viktor Farsic. The past couple of episodes, we've talked around KubeCon EU, but before that was another conference that used to be the conference that is now not so much, and that is DockerCon. I never had the opportunity to go to a DockerCon. I heard those were quite the thing.
Those were the best conferences ever.
And probably because it was a new thing, people were excited about it.
Changing the world type of conference.
Until it didn't, right? Well, it did change the world. But then,
it did change the world. It's just that the entity that is changing the world now changed.
Correct. But now it seems to be making a resurgence. And that's what we're talking about is Docker itself, not Mirantis. We're talking specifically about Docker. And Docker's doing something a little interesting. It's like one of the announcements that came out of DockerCon was Docker extensions. And we've talked about it a little bit, and we wanted to talk about them a little bit more just in detail. But since DockerCon, there have been a few other announcements. So we're going to sort of talk about, what's up with Docker, I guess. Let's first start with the extensions. What do you think about extensions?
They're bad.
Next.
Okay. No. So the extensions themselves are not really great. They're not something revolutionary, amazing, and things like that. I would even go as far as saying extensions are relatively low quality. But that's okay, because the real potential power of Docker Desktop extensions is that if you want to provide a developer experience that is a combined effort of multiple companies, not a single company, then Docker Desktop is probably the best positioned tool to do that, because it is probably the most common tool on everybody's laptop, right? If I would now do a survey and say, okay, what are the 5 tools that you have on your laptop? I bet that the 2 most commonly used ones would be Docker Desktop and VS Code. VS Code is already doing that for a while. Basically, you can extend VS Code with anything, right? You need the support for this programming language, is there as an extension. You want to do something, whatever that something is, there is an extension. Almost every software vendor today is making some sort of extension for VS Code. And Docker is well positioned to do the same. Another thing that, apart from being well positioned because it's everywhere, what I feel is a very positive development is Docker recognizing that we lost our chance to be alpha and omega ourselves as kind of a single company that gives you everything you need for whatever that something is. That train left the station. And Docker recognizing that and inviting companies to build something on top of Docker Desktop is absolutely amazing. Potentially amazing. Let's say potentially amazing, because I still want to see where those extensions go. Because the danger there that Docker is right now is, yes, because they're omnipresent, almost every company is going to invest a few hours to be present in Docker Desktop. Almost everybody is going to do that. The real question is whether companies will have sufficient incentive to invest seriously in that. One thing is, I've seen the extensions, it's relatively straightforward to make it, and I can now make an extension in a couple of hours, maybe a day, right? But the question is, will I spend significant amount of time to make it great? If Docker as a company manages to pull that off, to convince the rest of us to invest in it, then that might be something absolutely amazing. If Docker, like 5 years ago, said to almost any company, hey, I want serious investment from you into this ecosystem, they would get serious investments for sure. When I say investment, I don't mean necessarily money, but time. But that translates to money, right? Now the question is whether Docker can pull that now.
So that's extensions and business ideas. They also announced Docker Desktop for Linux. Big whoop.
That's also symptomatic and shows potential path. Docker realistically had no interest in the past to make equivalent of Docker Desktop in Linux because containers run natively in Linux. You do not need Docker Desktop as a tool that will run containers in a VM in Linux. That makes absolutely no, that would be wasted effort. But if Docker Desktop is not anymore primarily, or will not be primarily, hey, I can run containers on an operating system that does not support containers, then Docker Desktop on Linux makes much more sense.
Listener, are you seeing a thread here? Docker Desktop isn't about running containers.
It is, but it might not be in the future.
Okay, currently it is, but whatever. But that's not the key part of it anymore. That used to be the key part.
Yes.
It's not anymore. Now, one of the other things that's happened since DockerCon is a recent announcement about Tilt joining Docker. And if people aren't aware of what Tilt is, what is Tilt?
Tilt is a way to automate the processes that you are performing while developing something. Right? Build, test, deploy type of stuff. Not necessarily to production or anything like that. Not replacing pipelines, not replacing GitOps or whatever. But the part that you do until you push it back to Git and start PR process and what's not. I was about to say, I almost said, to automate processes for local development. Then I stopped myself because it's not necessarily local. Right? It could be remote.
Let's call it individual development.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a good one.
I've been fighting with that term too, because it's not necessarily local if you're working on a box you're not physically on. So, yeah. Exactly. Are you excited about this one?
Yeah, I love Tilt. I think the Tilt is absolutely awesome. And both Tilt and Docker are very much focused on developer experience, at what you just coined individual development. I love Tilt as a product. I'm not as fond. I'm much more fond of Tilt than Docker Desktop. But combining Tilt with omnipresence of Docker Desktop, hey, that's a good thing. And then there is a third feature which is not that new, but still in beta. I think And that's preview environments in Docker. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not.
So you can do something Gitpod like or GitHub code spaces like in Docker.
Really? Why would I want to do
You
that?
click a button and you get development environment.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it creates a container with the tools you need, like typical, like Gitpod, let's say. I think it's
Is that from
purely
Docker? Or are you talking
local.
about? Wait, are you talking about Docker? Or are you talking about Dev Container from Microsoft?
no, I'm talking about Docker.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, there is a button preview. I'm not sure whether it's called preview environments or dev environment or something like that. It's still in beta. And it basically gives you a container with, the tools you need and stuff like that. And then it works with Visual Studio Code. And basically it opens with Visual Studio Code, but not like remote Visual Studio Code running in a container or on a server, but basically it opens your local Visual Studio Code pointing to that and working with that workspace, let's call it. So combine those three, right? And then we have a story. Preview environments, development environments, whatever it's called, extensions, so that you have one place to potentially get your favorite tools and stuff. And Tilt, which is scaffold-like tool that automates your individual development processes. That's a story. That's a DevX.
Downside is the size of box you got to run in order to get all that running. That would be big, right?
Oh, it's not going to be the bigger box than what you would need without it on local machine, right? Because
state the specs then. Well, state the specs, because
it depends what you're doing. But if you need 1 gig for Java something, you're going to need that 1 gig no matter whether it's in a container or it's directly on your machine. Container itself is not going to use much extra resources. VM for a container, yes. But let's face it, that VM, Docker Desktop VM, is running on your machine no matter what.
Is this the beginning of the end for local tool sets? Everything now is going to go through some sort of aggregator. Is Docker Desktop now going to become the service catalog for your desktop?
It could be. It very well could be. They're well positioned. They're late in the game, right? So all the things we spoke already exist. We have extensions in Visual Studio Code. We have Gitpod for development environments. We have Octeto for development environments, and so on and so forth. And we have, I'm ignoring now the merger, but we have Tilt and Scaffold and similar tools to help you automate your processes. So all those things exist for a while. Nothing revolutionary. And there is a steep competition, but again, Docker is omnipresent. It is positioned to succeed even if it's entering the game late. In a similar way, I just actually I'm kind of happy. 2 days ago, I got finally accepted to CodeSpace's beta program. And it's a similar story from certain perspective that CodeSpaces already exist. We have tools that do what CodeSpaces does. But GitHub is omnipresent. It can allow itself to get late into the game. Same thing with Docker.
That's an interesting but scary business strategy. Let's be as late as possible to the game.
It's not that the decision was to postpone it. It's just Docker is still finding its way in a new world creating byte. So it's kind of a strange combination, right? The world we live in, from technical perspective, was created by Docker, but Docker is not the leading player anymore. So, but still, it's not late by intentionally late. It's simply late for various reasons or mishaps.
And a 2-year pandemic didn't help matters any either.
No, it didn't.
Or did it accelerate it? Right? We've talked about, everybody's talked about the pandemic accelerating things by 5 or 10 years. Did this give the Docker crew time to start piecing these things together?
I mean, pandemic certainly surfaced the need for some of those things, like remote environments. I bet that we wouldn't have GitHub space, code spaces, and Octeto and Gitpod, or at least not. They wouldn't be so popular if we didn't have pandemic. If everybody was still in an office.
If people were still in an office, their machines were on the network, the software on those machines were being managed centrally by some sort of service catalog system. But now that you're fully disconnected, you could still do that over a VPN, but that could take time. It would impact your workers. Whereas all of these other things are reasonably more lightweight.
Pandemic was kind to many software companies. Especially, I'm pretty sure that, not kind to all, some suffered, but same thing like with cloud. I haven't seen numbers, but I bet that pandemic accelerated cloud. I bet that many companies said, okay, so now how the heck do we make people do the job that they were doing in the office now remote with all the nonsense that we had in place that worked only when you're in the office? And then I bet that some of those companies said, look, with what we have, making people productive remote is going to be a nightmare. This is the last throw that we needed to move to cloud. I bet that there are some companies that had that line of thinking.
How did we end up there? Oh yeah, Docker created the cloud, right? That's what it was.
I forgot what we're talking about even.
What's your long-term thoughts on Docker? Long-term being 3 to 5 years.
I don't know. It's a complicated situation that very few companies were in, right? Complicated in both positive and negative sense. Docker has a name and Docker has presence. It doesn't have business yet. Today it has actually more business than its days of glory. But still, Docker is a relatively small company with relatively small income used by a massive number of people. Not many companies were in that situation. On one hand, Docker needs to figure out how to get over the fact that the glory days are not coming back, but that still there are enough assets that can elevate them above a company that is just starting.
If you could have any impact on the Docker team, magically assume that you're now their chairman of the board, what would you say to them?
Continue embracing, I'm not sure which phase they are, the rest of the industry. That was the biggest mistake Docker made. Arrogance. They're well positioned to do what they didn't want to do in the past, and that's to become valued partner for many other companies. When I say valued partner, I don't mean to act only as a partner. They should continue developing things and do their own stuff, but together with others. To accept that in their position, it makes a lot of difference whether they have allies or not.
How close are you to uninstalling Docker Desktop?
I don't have Docker Desktop. Actually, I did have it. I didn't have it, and then I installed it to check the extensions and previews, and uninstalled it again. Actually, I have the old laptop, the one that I have in the other location. That one has permanently Docker, just in case I need something.
So what is your stack today? And do we think the other stacks, do you think they're going to focus on what Docker is doing now, more of the developer experience?
In quite a few ways, Rancher Desktop is just as good or better than Docker ever was. For containers, Kubernetes, it gives me everything I need. That's the one sitting permanently on my computers. And I want to install back Docker Desktop. I just need to have a reason to do so. So it needs to either replace my Rancher desktop or to give me something that others don't. Extensions could very well be that thing. It's just that today they're not worth using. That's what I'm trying to say. They have a lot of potential and might easily be worth using in the future, but not today yet. If you look at them, they're ridiculous kind of. Less than a day was spent on each of those extensions, or majority of those extensions.
Anything else we can say about Docker?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm happy that Docker is going in a different direction, that it's finding its path. And I sound always very negative towards Docker because I think it's lost its way. But I honestly would like Docker to get back on my laptop. I honestly wish that.
You're not looking for Docker to go back to the way they were before. You're looking for them to be better.
I want them to be now to give me a reason to use it, to replace. So I have all the things that Docker gives today. I have it in alternative tools. I want them to reinvent themselves. I want them to let go of the past. So if there is a message, let go of the past. I'm not using. I don't care about Docker Compose. I don't want it. I don't mind if it's there, but that cannot be the main selling point, the reason for having Docker.
I'll ask it. Is Docker Swarm dead?
Is it a question or a statement?
Because people keep asking that question.
No, it's dead.
It's dead.
No, it's not dead. It's on live support. And there are still a couple of relatives paying for that live support. So nobody pulled the plug off, but it's only a matter of time. If you look at Mirantis, right? What is the first association you have with Mirantis? What is the first tool that comes to your mind?
None. I don't have any.
Lens.
Lens is through Mirantis?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sure that. Maybe am I wrong? Let me Google it.
I don't know. See, even while we're doing these things live, we don't remember everything.
Sure that it's it's Mirantis, exactly.
Did they acquire them though, or had they had them? Lens. I don't remember.
I'm not sure.
Okay,
but Lens is Mirantis. So, and as far as I know, ignoring now enterprise sales, and what goes in that direction. The most popular tool, as far as I know, from Mirantis is a Kubernetes only tool. If you went to KubeCon and went to Mirantis booth, it's all about Kubernetes. I don't think I've seen Swarm floating around. To this day, I don't understand why they bought it, to be honest, but that would be a separate story.
Different conversation for a different day. Okay, so if people haven't tried out the new things for Docker Desktop, should they at least try them out?
Yeah.
See if it works for them? No reason not to?
No reason not to, especially since, there are some things that you can say, for me to try this out, I need to invest days or weeks. This is you can try it out in like 5 minutes.
And then uninstall it. Following your strategies. Okay.
I just love Rancher. I think it's absolutely great. Rancher desktop.
Have you seen anything big coming in that recently? Or is it still pretty much where it was?
Some new stuff like this, not yesterday, but not long ago, kind of all of a sudden dashboard appeared as an option. Kind of, dashboard, look at dashboard. I don't use dashboards, but nice, why not? Kind of. And then every once in a while I go to preferences and see new stuff over there as well. So they're moving very, very fast.
Is there a third option for running containers on a desktop?
Podman,
that's true. Is there a fourth? See, I don't count. Well, wait, is Podman still using Containerd under the hood?
I'm not sure. I don't know what's using under the hood. Probably, almost certainly, yeah.
Okay. Is there a fourth?
No, that I use. I mean, you can, depends how freaky you are. You can be installing Lima yourself if you're on Mac, for example.
Yeah.
But I think that.
But then you're getting into the point of you might as well just pay $5 a month. instead of dealing with Lima.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean that in a bad way, but you're not going to get as nice of a user experience.
But it's, just as Docker simplified otherwise more complicated containers, Rancher Desktop, and this is not the same scope and scale, but Rancher Desktop is using Lima behind the scenes. It just made everything transparent, easy. I do not need to bother with stuff.
So if you're still in the past, like me most of the time, and you still haven't started using containers on a regular basis, take a look at Docker Desktop, take a look at Rancher Desktop, take a look at Podman, and see if it works into your workflows or not. And if it doesn't, maybe it's time for a new job.
Podman is... The other day, somebody asked something about Podman, and I described it as Red Hat being Apple, meaning that each of Red Hat components, applications, whatever, make a lot of sense individually, but through usefulness surfaces when you commit to the ecosystem, when you get inside that walled garden, right? I mean, like iPhone is great, whatever is Apple Watch is great, but Apple Watch really, you can buy Apple Watch without having iPhone, but you should have iPhone as well, right?
To get a fuller experience, the answer is yes. So, Docker Desktop, sideways thumb? Probably. Not thumbs down, not thumbs up.
The direction is thumbs up.
Direction thumbs up.
Yeah.
Implementation details of extensions,
Still
sideways
new,
thumbs.
But
yeah, still new. All right.
I think that...
No thumb. We'll call it.
I mean, I think that I'm guessing that there wasn't much time between Docker started working with companies on extensions and Docker announcing extensions. I'm pretty sure that that's not something that has been done by others for years. Probably, I bet that the first extension not written by Docker was written probably 2 months ago or something like that.
Well, if you've had time to test out Docker extensions, and we'd be interested in hearing what your experience was like, head over to the Slack workspace, go to the podcast channel. You'll see an entry for, what is this episode number? Let's say it's 168, because that is what it is. And leave your comments there.
We hope this episode was helpful to you. If you want to discuss it or ask a question, please reach out to us. Our contact information and a link to the Slack workspace are at devopsparadox.com/contact. If you subscribe through Apple Podcast, be sure to leave us a review there. That helps other people discover this podcast. Go sign up right now at devopsparadox.com to receive an email whenever we drop the latest episode. Thank you for listening to DevOps Paradox.